The 1960s were a time of counterculture revolution and young people being upset at what the government was doing. With this in mind, comics writer Stan Lee decided to create a superhero that would be the antithesis of this. Taking inspiration from industrialist Howard Hughes, Lee created Anthony Tony Stark, who was a multi-billionaire, weapons manufacturer, and womanizer. The idea was to create a character that would be everything the readers hated, and yet still be likable. With scripter Larry Lieber and artists Don Heck and Jack Kirby, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, was born. He first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 39 in May 1963 and quickly became one of Marvel's most popular characters. So, when Kevin Feige decided to create a shared cinematic universe, the first character to be adapted was Iron Man. Cut to 2008, when Jon Favreau directed the first Marvel Cinematic Universe entry, Iron Man. While in Afghanistan for a weapons demonstration, weapons manufacturer Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., is attacked and captured by terrorists. He's held captive with local Dr. Yinsen Shaun Taub and ordered to build weapons for the terrorists. Seeing that the terrorists are using weapons his company made, Tony instead decides to build a suit of armor to escape. With help from Yinsen, he's able to complete the suit and escape, but at the cost of Yinsen's life. Once he returns home, Tony decides to stop manufacturing weapons and instead focus on refining his armored suit. With his new suit, Tony decides to go and destroy all of the weapons caches the terrorists have. Unfortunately, this doesn't settle well for his business partner Obadiah Stane, Jeff Bridges, who's been supplying weapons to the terrorists. Stane manages to build his own suit, and Tony has to stop him before it's too late. While on the surface it seems like a giant explosion fest, there's a much deeper story going on here. When we first meet Tony, he's self-centered, egotistical, irresponsible, and doesn't seem to care about anyone other than himself. After his experience in Afghanistan, he returns a changed man who wants to undo his past mistakes. It's a classic story of redemption that anyone can relate to, helped by Robert Downey Jr.'s fantastic performance. Not only is he very charismatic and funny, he also sells the more emotional scenes and really shows his skills. It also helps that he's supported by a great cast, including Jeff Bridges, Terrence Howard, and Gwyneth Paltrow. For someone who's known for playing heroes and chill guys, Bridges is surprisingly intense and frightening as the villain.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Paltrow is also quite good here, and she has great chemistry with Downey Jr. Of course, a superhero movie wouldn't be much without some thrilling action, and this one has it in spades. From Tony fighting off terrorists with his initial suit to the final battle with Ironmonger, it's fun to watch. What helps is that we get to know the characters so well that we actually care about the action. Admittedly, the final battle does go into CGI overkill, but even still, because the characters are so well developed, it's okay. At the end of the day, this movie shows that even the most self-centered people can change for the better. As the start to a major cinematic universe, this is the best way to get things started. Honestly, other than some dated 2008 references, this movie still holds up well today. Overall, Iron Man works thanks to a strong lead performance, exciting action, and a well-developed story.
I don't want to see this on your MySpace page.
After finding success with the Fantastic Four, comic creators Stan Lee and Jack Kirby worked on a new, more unconventional hero. Inspired by the 1931 versions of Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they created a sympathetic yet monstrous character. Dubbed the Incredible Hulk, he first appeared in The Incredible Hulk #1 in May of 1962 and was a massive hit. Interestingly enough, the Hulk was originally supposed to be gray, but due to a printing error was turned green. When Marvel adapted their characters to television in the 1970s, they struck gold with the Hulk TV series. Starring Bill Bixby as David Banner and Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, the show ran for 5 seasons. Then in 2003, famed director Ang Lee brought the character to the big screen with mixed results. 5 years later, after Iron Man, it was decided to add the Incredible Hulk to the MCU. After a science experiment gone wrong, Bruce Banner, Edward Norton, is on the run from the US government. His experiments have doused him with toxic gamma radiation, and he's been searching for a cure, but without much luck. Unfortunately, he doesn't stay hidden for long as General Ross, William Hurt, tracks him down to Brazil. In addition to the general, a highly trained soldier named Emil Blonsky, Tim Roth, is after him, but for different reasons. It turns out Bruce's experiments have caused him to transform into a hulking beast whenever he gets angry. While trying to find a cure, Bruce meets back up with an old flame, Elizabeth Ross, Liv Tyler. Wanting to take on this Hulk, Blonsky wants to undergo the same experiments as Bruce to become even stronger. Unfortunately, things go wrong, and Blonsky turns into a giant abomination that only the Hulk can stop.
Hulk! Smash!
While I have seen the 2003 version of the Hulk, it's been so long that I honestly don't remember much. That being said, this version is definitely an improvement over the Ang Lee version, though still not quite there. The first thing to mention is the cast, who all do a fairly good job in their roles. Edward Norton makes for a very likable lead, and he has great chemistry with Liv Tyler. Tim Roth also does a great job as the obsessed Blonsky, determined to get his shot at the Hulk.
How you feeling, man?
Like a monster.
William Hurt, while not giving an amazing Oscar-worthy performance, still does fine as the Stern General. Also, for the most part, much of the CGI holds up here, and it is visually stunning. Director Louis Leterrier really takes advantage of the shooting locations and has tons of sweeping camera shots. While we don't see much of the Hulk until 50 minutes in, it's still cool when he shows up. Though the action sequences aren't quite as memorable as those in Iron Man, there are still some standout moments. The biggest action sequences are probably the fight against the military at the college and the final battle with Abomination. But this movie is more focused on character development than straight up action, which is welcome, but also somewhat disappointing. While the more character-driven scenes aren't bad and the acting is strong, those scenes tend to drag the movie down. Also, this movie sets up some loose ends that are never really touched upon in any of the subsequent films. Regardless, this is still a fairly entertaining early entry and well worth revisiting, even if it is slightly rocky. Overall, while it has its problems, The Incredible Hulk packs enough punch to keep superhero fans entertained.
Is that all you got?
With the success of Iron Man and The Incredible Hulk in 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was born. While there weren't any new entries the following year, a follow-up to Iron Man was released in 2010. Many of the same people from the original returned for the sequel, including director Jon Favreau and much of the original cast. However, in between movies, Terrence Howard, who played James Rhodes, was replaced with Don Cheadle. It's unclear what led to the recasting, but sources say it was due to a pay dispute. However, there are also sources claiming that Howard and Favreau did not get along on set. Regardless, given how successful the first film was, it was only inevitable that a sequel was in the works. So, 2 years after the original, Jon Favreau and company treated audiences to Iron Man 2. 6 months after the events of the original, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., is on top of the world. He's considered an international hero thanks to his Iron Man suit, and he's ushered in a new era of peace. However, not everyone feels that way about him, particularly Ivan Vanko, Mickey Rourke, who has a personal grudge with Stark. At the same time, the US government is demanding that Tony turn over the Iron Man technology to them. On top of that, the palladium core keeping Tony's chest arc reactor functioning is slowly killing him. Soon, Ivan attacks Tony using similar technology, which makes everyone doubt if Iron Man can save them or not. This catches the attention of rival weapons manufacturer Justin Hammer, Sam Rockwell, who partners with Ivan to bring down Stark. All the while, agents from S.H.I.E.L.D. are keeping a watchful eye on Iron Man.
I'm gonna have to ask you to exit the donut.
Given how amazing the first film was, naturally the sequel had some pretty big shoes to fill. For the most part, this movie does succeed in continuing what made the first film work. The returning cast, especially Downey Jr., still deliver solid performances, and the new cast works just as well here. While Terrence Howard is missed, Don Cheadle is a good replacement, and he works well with Downey Jr. Mickey Rourke makes for a very intimidating villain, and Sam Rockwell has some pretty funny moments. Scarlett Johansson is good as Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, but it feels like she hasn't quite nailed the character yet. She comes across a bit too stoic at times and just seems to be trying too hard to be serious. Going back to Downey Jr., he once again shows how he really was perfect casting for Tony Stark. However, as good as this movie is, it doesn't quite reach the same heights as the first one. After the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, there's a huge stretch where not much happens. It isn't until about an hour and 20 minutes in that another action sequence happens. Much of the in-between time is spent with Tony trying to find a suitable replacement for his palladium core. It does help to advance the overall story, but the scenes tend to drag out and grind to a halt. Also, once Sam Rockwell enters the fray, Mickey Rourke takes a back seat as a villain. Not that Sam Rockwell is bad, but they introduced Mickey Rourke as this powerful adversary, and he doesn't do much. Despite these problems, Iron Man 2 is still an enjoyable time thanks to strong performances and fun action.
Ready? Get down! Are you Iron Man? Sometimes. We believe in you.
Most superheroes tend to be humans either gifted with superpowers or with enough resources to make themselves stronger. But in 1962, Stan Lee, along with Jack Kirby and Larry Lieber, decided to create a superhero from a god. Since most people knew of the Greek and Roman gods, Lee decided to base the character on Norse gods. So, the mighty Thor debuted in Journey into Mystery number 83 in August of 1962 and became another Marvel household name. Interestingly, plans for a Thor movie date back to the early 1990s, with Sam Raimi wanting to direct. Over the years, the film went through various stages of development hell, with the rights going to various studios. Eventually, Paramount acquired the rights, director Kenneth Branagh was hired to helm the project, and Chris Hemsworth would play Thor. So, 3 years after Iron Man kickstarted the MCU, we have Thor. In the far-off realm of Asgard, the god Thor, Chris Hemsworth, is said to become the new king. That is, until a group of frost giants invade and attempt to make off with a powerful weapon. Believing this an act of war, Thor travels to the home of the frost giants, accompanied by his friends. Unfortunately, this breaks the truce between Asgard and the frost giants, so Odin, Anthony Hopkins, strips Thor of his powers. Meanwhile, Jane Foster, Natalie Portman, is conducting research on star patterns when she runs into Thor with her car. As Thor stumbles around Earth trying to reclaim his power, his brother Loki, Tom Hiddleston, takes over the throne. In addition to Thor, his hammer Mjolnir has landed on Earth, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is investigating the phenomenon. Thor must learn what it means to be a true king and reclaim his power before it's too late. When I decided to revisit the MCU, this is one of the entries I was looking forward to the least. While this movie has its flaws, I'm happy to say it's not nearly as bad as I remember. Starting off, much like Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man, Chris Hemsworth is perfect casting as Thor. His charisma literally flies off the screen, and he's also very sympathetic in many of the more dramatic scenes. Tom Hiddleston as Loki is probably one of the best villains the MCU has had, largely thanks to his performance. While not as over the top as in the later films, you can tell Hiddleston is having fun in the role. The rest of the Asgardian cast does a fine job, even if they're not given much screen time. And speaking of Asgard, the production design is breathtaking, and Kenneth Branagh's direction is top-notch. Unfortunately, while this movie is enjoyable, there's also a lot that drags this movie down. For one, while the regular human cast is okay, they're very underwhelming compared to the Asgardian cast. Natalie Portman and Stellan Skarsgård are decent, but Kat Dennings can get pretty annoying, especially with her sitcom-like dialogue.
I think that was legally your fault. Get the first aid.
Do me a favor, don't be dead. Years of research. Gone.
They even took my iPod.
Got the backups.
They took our backups. They took the backups of our backups. They were extremely thorough.
Just downloaded like 30 songs onto there.
Could you please stop with your iPod? Who are these people?
Also, while the scenes on Asgard are visually stunning and interesting, the scenes on Earth are just ho-hum. The movie tries to set up a romance between Hemsworth and Portman, but they don't seem to have much chemistry. If anything, I more so bought Hemsworth and Jamie Alexander as Lady Sif as a couple. In the end, this movie is a bit of a mess, but it still has enough enjoyable moments. Overall, Thor is very middle of the road. Not amazing, but not terrible either. It's better than the sequel, but that's for another time.
Another.
Of the mainline Avengers, Captain America is probably the oldest, having first appeared in Captain America Comics #1 in 1941. Created by cartoonists Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, the character was designed to be a patriotic superhero. His first comic probably has one of the most iconic covers ever, featuring Captain America punching Hitler in the face. While the character was very popular during the war, the years following the war saw the character decline in popularity. Once Marvel Comics was established in the 1960s, Captain America was brought back as one of the original Avengers. Since then, he's remained one of Marvel's most recognizable characters and has spanned countless generations. There were 2 made-for-TV movies in the 1970s, plus a movie from the early 1990s meant for theaters but released direct-to-video. Eventually, the character made it to the big screen with Captain America, the First Avenger. At the height of World War II, Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, wants to join the army but can't due to physical problems. That is, until his patriotism catches the attention of Dr. Erskine, Stanley Tucci, who can help Rogers enlist. Erskine is working on a super soldier serum and he wants Rogers as the prime candidate. While Colonel Phillips, Tommy Lee Jones, is skeptical, the experiment works, though Erskine is killed and the serum is destroyed. With his new abilities, Rogers is initially enlisted merely for entertainment, but Agent Carter, Haley Atwell, knows he wants more. Steve learns of several POWs being held captive by Johann Schmidt, Hugo Weaving, and sets out to rescue them. Schmidt, aka Red Skull, and his partner Dr. Zola, Toby Jones, are harnessing a strange power source for their army. With his new Howling Commandos, Rogers, aka Captain America, sets off to stop Red Skull for good. After entries like Iron Man 2 and Thor proved somewhat underwhelming, this more than makes up for it. This is a fantastic World War II era superhero movie that has some fantastic performances and a fun 40s era pulp style. It's not a surprise that director Joe Johnston was hired given his work on The Rocketeer. Much like that film, this one has that same aesthetic of an old wartime film with a somewhat modern feel. In addition, the cast is terrific, especially Chris Evans, who you immediately identify with given his situation. While the CGI used to make him look short and skinny is slightly dodgy, his performance more than makes up for it. In addition, you also have great performances from Haley Atwell, veteran actor Tommy Lee Jones, and a very sinister Hugo Weaving. Everyone plays their parts incredibly well, and even the smaller characters are memorable. If I do have any complaints, one would be this somewhat excessive use of montage. I understand that you want to convey a lot in a short amount of time, but it feels like padding. Something tells me there were several scenes left on the cutting room floor, and the montages are there to make up for it. Also, from a story perspective, it's somewhat ridiculous that they would take a bona fide super soldier and just make him an entertainer. It's that old cliche of authority figure doesn't understand, but the good guy does, but no one listens to him. Plus, the beginning of the movie kind of spoils the end of the movie, so there's no real suspense. That said, the characters, style, and action more than compensate for some of the movie's problems. While it has some flaws, Captain America: The First Avenger is a fantastic World War II era superhero movie for our inner patriot.
Hard to see what all the fuss is about. Write that down.
Since the release of Iron Man, the MCU is ultimately leading to a team-up of Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers. Debuting in the Avengers #1 in 1963, the initial team included Iron Man, the Hulk, Thor, Ant-Man, and the Wasp. Captain America was introduced later on, having been frozen in ice, and many more would soon join the team. Much like the comics, producer Kevin Feige imagined the series as having individual movies leading up to a crossover event. From 2008 to 2011, each of the films had little post-credit scenes that hinted at an eventual crossover. Finally, in 2012, Joss Whedon was brought on board to helm this crossover event, bringing all the established heroes together. While Edward Norton was replaced by Mark Ruffalo, all the other cast members returned for an ultimate showdown. Audiences got to witness that ultimate showdown with the release of the 2012 film, The Avengers. S.H.I.E.L.D. has recently acquired the Tesseract, a strange cube-like object containing unknown and unlimited power. Loki, Tom Hiddleston, comes equipped with a mind-controlling spear, takes control of several agents, and steals the Tesseract. Agent Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, moves forward with his Avengers initiative to bring a team of extraordinary people together. He recruits Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., Captain America, Chris Evans, and Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo for starters. However, Thor, Chris Hemsworth, steps in, saying that Loki must face Asgardian justice and ends up joining alongside the Avengers. Lastly, there's Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, but things don't start off great initially. They manage to capture Loki, but this leads to the team almost splitting up and S.H.I.E.L.D. being nearly crippled. Once Loki summons his army known as the Chitauri, they must put aside their differences and learn to work together.
Call out patterns and strays. Stark, you've got the perimeter. Thor, you gotta try and bottleneck that portal. Slow him down. You and me, we stay here on the ground. Keep the fight. And Hulk. Smash.
While some of today's audience might not understand, there was tons of hype well before this movie was even announced. Nothing like this had ever been done before, a series of individual superhero movies leading up to one big event movie. Luckily, not only did it work, but it turned out to be one of the best modern-day blockbusters ever made. By this point, we had gotten to know each of these characters well enough to get attached to them and actually care. What makes this movie work so well is that each of the main heroes is given their own moment to shine. It never feels like one hero dominates the movie, but instead like equal time is given to each one. There's some great character building, such as the feud between Rogers and Stark and the relationship between Romanoff and Banner. It all builds to an exciting climax of superheroes fighting aliens. If there are any negatives to the film, they are very minor and border on being nitpicks. The movie does feel slightly longer than it really is, though it's never boring or uninteresting. Also, there's quite a few gaps where it feels like not much is happening and you're waiting for more action. While Joss Whedon's direction isn't terrible, it does feel homogenized compared to the styles of the other films. I think what throws me off is how all the other movies are in widescreen, whereas this is more full screen. Not that stuff is being cut out from the sides, but it feels slightly overcrowded and busy at times. But like I said, those are very minor complaints for what is, I feel, a phenomenal summer blockbuster. The Avengers is everything a huge blockbuster should be. Fun, entertaining, heartfelt, engaging, and memorable.
You ready for another bout?
What, you getting sleepy?
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that. Puny god.